Ready.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. This is Preston Bryant. We are meeting remotely again per allowance under the governor's executive order. This is the January 11th, 2021 meeting of the library board. We will proceed by way of the agenda that has been properly publicly advertised and members of the public may join. We do have a quorum, so I will officially call the meeting to order and thank you all for joining. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda, which you have before you. Remind me, Sandy, do we have to have a formal recorded vote on approving the agenda?
Normally, we just do a voice vote for that, so I don't think you have to call the roll for that one.
So everyone has seen the agenda that's been sent to you and publicly advertised. Are there any, verbally, are there any amendments or suggestions or questions about the agenda? Hearing none.
I move that it be adopted as drafted.
Seconded.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we proceed with the agenda as before you. And I believe by acclamation, we can adopt that unless our attorney tells us otherwise a recorded vote is not needed. First up, welcome everyone. It's been 2021 has been a year already, it seems. Lots that's going on. Can we make sure everyone is on mute if you're not speaking? Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome. And I think in either Sandy's report and or my report, we will update you on the general operations and how things are going, as well as an update on the processing of Governor Wilder's papers, which has been very successfully done and to the wide acclaim of all who have been intimately following it. And then we will update you on our participation in the one special event, which is the ongoing planning for this year's year-long commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the Virginia State Constitution. With that, we're going to proceed as we have with previous virtual meetings and try to do it as efficiently as possible, which will be centered on staff presentations and reports that are in your packet. Before we do, Sandy, is there anything that, well, we need to approve the minutes. Let's go ahead and do that. The minutes are before you from the September 14th, 2020 meeting. Are there any amendments to those minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt?
If we approve the amendments.
Paul Brockwell moves.
I'll second that.
Mark Miller seconds. All in favor of adopting the amendments, say, I guess, Audrey, we have to do a roll call on this. Audrey,
I think we've done it in the past, Mr. Chair. I mean, we've just done it by
That's
general voice.
That's correct. You do have to do a voice call vote.
Yeah, Cham, on the virtual calls, we have to actually go one by one.
Okay.
So apologies. So I will call the roll. Ms. Bowles? Everyone can,
Yes.
yeah, everyone could go ahead and take yourself off mute and be ready to respond. So Ms. Bowles votes aye. Mr. Gary?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. Brockwell?
Aye.
Ms. Castillo?
Aye.
Mr. Islami?
Aye.
Mr. Light?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Ms. Sims?
Aye.
Mr. Tango?
Aye.
I believe that is everyone. Did I miss anyone? I think I got everyone. Okay, we can all go back on mute again. Thank you for that efficient roll call vote. So before we're proceeding, Sandy, do you have any opening remarks? I know that's in lieu of the librarian report, but anything to say before to kick us off?
No, just that you might want to let everyone know that we do have one guest today.
Oh, excellent. I'm sorry.
And that's the chair of the Library of Virginia Foundation Board.
Pia, yes. So we are very happy to have Pia Trigiani, the chair of the Library Foundation Board, who very much wants to be a part of our proceedings and know what's going on firsthand. Pia, welcome. Do you have anything you would like to say just briefly to open up, Pia?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And thank you all for all your good work. We want to try and develop our partnership even further and think that this might just be one way to step in that direction. So thank you.
We love having you here. Thank you. So let's proceed on with the committee division reports. And first up is the Archival Collections and Records Management Services Committee, which is chaired by Ms. Little. And if Barbara has any opening remarks, great. If not, we will proceed straight to the staff report.
Well, I just want to congratulate all of the staff on the tremendous job that they did working with the Governor Wilder's papers. It's quite an achievement. I've worked through many archival boxes in my experience, and having to go through these and essentially read them line by line, when you're looking at over 1,000 boxes, you're looking at quite an achievement in a very, very short period of time. I do appreciate that. The court records preservation program is moving forward, and I just wanted to take a moment to make a comment. I recently received a call from someone in the state who was concerned about the fact that a new court clerk had told them that the Chancery Records Project had been suspended or canceled and that they would no longer be doing that. I gave her Greg Crawford's name, told her to contact him, that he would have updated information. And by the time she got off the phone with him and got back to talk to the court clerk, he was already on the phone explaining the situation to her and saying that she had received some misinformation, that the project was moving forward. The immediate response was, I think, exceptional. And it points to what the staff does to move forward with any issues that arrive. And I was certainly amazed at how quickly he did respond. And I'm sure Mike would like to speak to the archival storage problem that we're currently having. So let him talk just a moment.
Thank you, Barbara. Mike and others on staff, please take it away.
Thank you, Barbara. I appreciate that. I think that in terms of the archival storage project, I believe that John Metz knows more about that than I do. He's been a little more involved in that project, so I'll let him address that for you.
Well, very quickly, we've started working with actually the company we use as a reformatting vendor for microfilm and digitization. Backstage Library Works. They also do a lot of collections work. And so we've invited them in for an initial analysis of the situation on our third stacks, where our bound collections are kept. And we also paid a visit to the State Record Center, where the archives pod is really it's at capacity. It's kind of in crisis mode, and we'll be updating you as things unfold. We expect by the end of the month, we expect a proposal on or a more detailed sort of evaluation of what it is we need to do and how we might approach it, so that we can make this mesh with the developments of the joint, or the development of the joint storage center at the State Record Center. The idea is that we have our collections completely under control by the time we need to make decisions on which collections to move out there so we can make best use of space. So just started, and you're going to hear a lot more over the coming months.
Thank you, John, very much. Is there additional staff report on this particular committee, Sandy or others? Okay, so Sandy, you're on mute.
Sorry, I don't think so.
Okay.
Barbara seems to have covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Barbara, very much for your efficiency. Next up is Education, Outreach, and Research Services Committee, chaired by Johnson Bowles. Johnson.
Well, good morning. I think the packet gives a really great overview of what's been going on in this area. And I'd just like to point out the efforts of having an impact report about what's been going on in terms of participation, but also the social media outreach that's been done. You know, I've talked about it before, but I think having those numbers right in front of us is very compelling. So I want to thank the team for that. Just briefly, I'd also like to thank the team, especially Ann Henderson, for her work and the whole team's work on making sure that there is inclusive language throughout the library's policies and procedures. And I think that is great work and something that we always need to keep an eye on. So thank you. And then, you know, I'll leave it to Greg to maybe say a couple of words, but I think they did a great job on the packet this time. And I think that was very thorough. So I hope you all read that.
Thank you, Johnson. Greg?
Yes, that's a good summary. And Johnson, of course, is right. The packet does have plenty of information about what we've been working on. We still are in the early stages of working on our language, inclusive language, and we'll be consulting with a wide range of people in the library to make sure that we make that a library-wide effort. And I'd also like to give a little shout out to Ashley Ramey and to Emma Ito on our staff also, who really kind of started the ball rolling with that. And I also want to say we're excited about taking part in the Virginia Constitution anniversary that's coming up. It's obviously was an important constitution, partially because of what it replaced, the 1902 Constitution, but also for the many innovations that it made. So we look forward to working on that. There are a number of partners who we have for that project, and it will be the subject of our Brown Teachers Institute in the fall, which we're very excited about. So that's great. Thank you all.
Excellent. Any questions for Greg or Johnson on this? I have one, and I'm not sure, given, and this goes back to the Wilder papers, when all that was became public about the Wilder papers, and there was a bit of a brouhaha in terms of public inquiries, just members of the general public who read this, were concerned about it. Did we get one or two or an avalanche of inquiries, or was it relatively quiet, you know, aside from the principals who were involved who raised the issues?
It was relatively quiet. That said, we did post something. We did a post through social media, through our iContact, the same portal that you get our newsletter on. And we did get some comments back to that. And, you know, we tracked those, but they were, it was interesting. Some of them were like, yes, this is a fault. I'm glad you're going to fix it. And others were really saying, you know, we trust the library to fix this. So, one thing that wasn't mentioned, but that I think is important to know, is we kept Governor Wilder apprised throughout the whole process. And so he would keep people apprised as well. And when it was over, in fact, just last week, Governor Wilder came into the library We had arranged for him to tape some remarks for a Martin Luther King Day program he's doing that'll be broadcast in Alexandria. And he wanted to tape them here. And when that was done, we took him upstairs to see the boxes. And he was visibly moved by how much there was and what that legacy is. And it was actually a terrific morning. Or excuse me, he came at 2. We moved the time. That's right. So it was a terrific afternoon. He was very pleased. So, you know, it should never have happened to begin with, but having happened, I think, and we have let anyone know who was concerned that they are done.
Yep. And I remember it when all of this broke 6 months ago. Sandy was very good in informing the public and keeping the board apprised as to what the general public inquiries were. And you said then just what you said now, but I was just kind of curious if there's anything else that has happened, but it's really kind of quieted down. So that's helpful. Any other questions on education outreach and research? Hearing none. On to legislative and finance. Mr. Light.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry to report that our staff liaison, Connie Warren, is not with us today. She's had some medical issues that have prevented her from attending the meeting, but she has still been doing a lot of the work that's required of her position. And if you will look on your tab at the budget, the expenditures, comparison and things of that nature, I'll just simply say that my read of it is that the budget is, the expenditures are in line proportionally with where we are in the fiscal year. And I'm sure if Connie were here, she could elaborate on it. But and if you have any questions, perhaps Sandy would be willing to wade into it. But it looks like from a budget comparison viewpoint that we're right on track and consistent with our historical figures in the past. Are there any questions or comments about the budget comparison before I move on to a couple other issues?
I actually do have a question, if I could ask, about the CCRP funds. So Sandy, hopefully you can answer this question with Connie absent. We've seen a growth in the CCRP funds. CCRP funds are a unique budget item because the money comes and flows over budget years and at different times. And we've seen that we moved the grant process for the last year back a little bit because of the events of 2020. Additionally, the General Assembly raised the recordation fee that goes to fund the CCRP funds. So what is caught, is that part of the growth in the funds, or is it we just haven't are we seeing more revenue coming into the system over the course of the first 6 months of the new legislation being in place?
We are definitely seeing additional revenue come in. The way we have approached this, because it is the safest from a budget and expenditure point of view, is we bring that money in 1 year, but we don't budget to spend it till the following year. So you will see, and that's in part because staff is paid with that money, and if you spend it and then the funds drop off because of problems in the economy and so forth, then you've got an issue. So what the amount that's budgeted for this year does not reflect those increased funds, and you will see that in next year. So that will go up significantly for sure. But if you look at where we are this time of year, we're 28% spent on CCRP, and last year was 26%. Okay. So we definitely make up for it when those projects come in and we reimburse the localities for them.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Any other question before I move on to a couple other issues?
Mr. Chair, I have one question for, I guess, Sandy. On page 2 of the comparisons, the one that's November of 19 versus November of 20, under the special funds, it shows 23% down. Is that a function of timing or something, or what is, that's a significant?
It is, and I was pretty sure somebody would ask that, so I made sure to check with Connie on that. The main difference, well, there's several reasons for it. Last year, we had some money that we don't have this year, connected with the 100th anniversary of the commemoration of women's suffrage. So there was some money that came to us to help with events there that we don't have to spend this year. We also work with local libraries to provide E-rate help. They are eligible to get reimbursements from the federal government for a lot of their telecommunications and internet costs, but it's a very complicated process. So we negotiate and have a contract with a vendor, and they pay, the public libraries pay us something, and then that vendor works for them to bring them usually quite large reimbursements. Last year, we actually made 2 payments to that vendor because we were bringing the timing of that into line with the federal fiscal year. So you won't see that next year either. We also had a number of repairs at the State Record Center that had to be done and would have been spent by this time last year that, God willing, we will not have this year in place. So it's a confluence of all those things that meant we spent a lot more of earned or special revenue than we will this year.
Thank you very much. Mr. Light, back to you.
All right, what I'd like to do, I've got 2 substantive issues that I'm going to address here in a second, but what I'd like to do is make a motion of get well, speedy get well wishes to Connie. And it would just be a simple motion by the board that we understand that she's had some health challenges, but that we also understand that she's on the way to recovery and will soon be back fully in the saddle, and just wish her the best from the board. And I'd like to entertain a motion to that effect. Or let me make the motion and you're a second for it then.
Thank you. Mr. Light moves, and who?
Second.
So I think, was that Mr. Brockwell who seconded?
Yes, sir.
By voice vote, I think we can perhaps do this.
If you make a vote, unfortunately, you do have to do under the
Okay.
authorization. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Yep. We'll do it that way. So if everyone can come off of mute, and we will move through this very quickly. Ms. Bowles.
Aye.
Mr. Gary.
Aye.
Ms. Blevins.
Aye.
Mr. Brockwell.
Aye.
Ms. Castillo.
Aye.
Mr. Islami.
Aye.
Mr. Light.
Aye.
Ms. Little.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Ms. Murphy.
Aye.
Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Ms. Sims.
He's away from her.
Ms. Sims. Mr. Tango.
Aye.
I'm from Ms. Sims, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcy. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Light, very much for that kind motion.
And Sandy, I don't know how we want to transmit that to Connie. If I were in town, I would send her an actual note. But if you could just convey to her that the minutes will reflect those best wishes and speedy recovery, and that we're sorry that she's had these health challenges, maybe that'll get the word to her, so to speak.
Will do.
So there are 2 substantive issues that I want to address, and these were really brought to my attention by Sandy, so she probably wants to get into any detail. But the good news is that the governor has included in his budget for this year a permanent addition of $400,000 for the library to help us reduce the backlog of processing gubernatorial records. If you remember, that money had been allocated and then unallocated by the governor last year in reaction to the economic situation. But needless to say, really happy when I got the note from Sandy that money was back in as a permanent addition. Sandy, would you like to comment on any of that?
I will just say that a lot of the credit for that also goes to Preston, because he kept the governor's chief of staff informed about the importance of this money. And he has also written to every member of the House Appropriations and Senate Finance Committees to urge them to make sure that money stays there. So fingers crossed. I think we're in good shape, but we won't know till they go home.
Great. Well, that was really welcome news when you sent me the email about that. The other thing is, as you know, as Sandy's already alluded to, the session's getting ready to start, and we monitor legislation that will affect the library, either directly or indirectly. And Sandy tells me that our review, at least of the bills that are out there, it doesn't look like there's anything significant going on that we need to be have on our radar. And again, Sandy, if you want to comment in more detail on that, you're welcome to do so.
I'll just say Preston may have a better idea, but I haven't been able to find online a calendar that confirms the last date for introducing legislation. I think it's fairly soon. So until that date is passed, we won't know for certain, and we are watching. But right now, we haven't flagged any legislation that will cause us to have to monitor it very carefully.
Yeah, as of this morning, there were 285 bills, House and Senate bills introduced, and some resolutions here and there that are mostly non-substantive. And that's against about 1,100 or 1,200 that are to be allowed this session. So, approaching a quarter, not quite a quarter. I don't think there's been a procedural resolution introduced yet or made public, which is the rules of the road for how the session will be governed. So, and the procedural resolution has in it the bill drafting deadlines and all that kind of stuff. January 12, which is Wednesday in the open, Legislative Services will have all redrafts for pre-filed bills available. The bill pre-filing period ends January 13 at 10, which is 2 hours before the session starts. And I think there may be still a day or two or some period of time for other bills to be introduced. But again, as Sandy said, it's a little bit loosey-goosey right now, oddly. So, Mr. Light, back to you.
All right, well, that concludes, unless anybody has any other questions about anything from the finance and legislative perspective, that concludes our report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Light. Mr. Miller, Public Library Development Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We will have one action item on this. So.
We will, and I'm going to let, as soon as I finish some remarks, let Kim fill us in on what we'll be voting on today. But I do want to comment on, and also be letting Nan fill us in on some of the things that's been going on in the last quarter with library development. But on the item that Kim is going to talk to us further about, and that we are going to vote on, state aid. And I've always had a hard time articulating my view of state aid and how that there should be a better formula for distributing state aid amongst libraries and communities that frankly need it more. And this is the chart that you have on page 13, starts on page 13, is emblematic of that. I think puts it into better words. Whereas we see what's going to happen is the previous budget included $1 million increase for fiscal 21 and fiscal 22 for state aid because of the pandemic. That was put aside. And then the first year was added back. And so we will be coming back to do this possibly in April at our next meeting if the state adds back the money for 22. But this is a good example of how you can see an unequal distribution of state aid by percentages. Just as for example, Craig County, $445 comes out of their state aid allocation by being down $1 million in 22. That's from $9,200 to $8,700. That $445 means a lot more to Craig County than, for example, the $23,000 difference to Loudoun County. And I think those are things that we still need to look at, figuring out a way until state aid is fully funded and we're still millions and millions short, how we can go about working with the General Assembly to rectify such a situation. Nan and I are going to be meeting tomorrow to kind of bat around some ideas. And part of that includes something Sandy had talked to me about previously, is a JLARC study, a Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee that will look into if we can get them to do it, look into things like state aid. The last JLARC was done, I think in 1999, looking at state aid and the formula and the allocation. Maybe it is what we're doing right now might be the best way, but after 22 years, it's probably time to just take a look at it and see what we can do to help until we get to fully funded state aid, find some way to further balance out those who need the most versus those who need the least. Kind of an egalitarian way of looking at things, but on a very small level, but that is what a lot of people like to see. And I think it's incumbent upon us to try and see if there's something out there that we can do that can help such a situation. So that's just my comments on that, and we'll have a motion shortly, but now I guess we'll go to Nan first, and then Kim to finish up with her view on the state aid that we're going to be voting on.
Thank you, Mark. And Kim is actually not with us, so
okay.
Take care of both.
Nan's doing double duty.
Yeah, no problem. Although I do certainly rely on Kim's excellent data and number crunching abilities. That's not my forte. The division, we submitted our executive summary, and there's a lot in there. It is a very strange time for public libraries. We are keeping close tabs on who's open, who's not, who's doing curbside. And honestly, that changes on a day-to-day basis, depending on exposure rates, what's happening in particular localities. And so every single library is in a different space, and certainly trying to support them in the best way that we can. So much of our job in our division is support and training. And usually we're in the field visiting libraries and seeing libraries and helping with projects and things like that. We certainly aren't able to do that. So each of the team has been making it a point to call their respective customers, if you will, working through all 95 libraries to touch base with directors and youth services librarians and branch managers and training coordinators, so that we're having some virtual FaceTime with them, and mostly just hearing a lot of frustration, a lot of morale sort of issues, a lot of fear as public libraries. The pandemic has been both a blessing and a curse, because it's been a great opportunity for us to deepen our relationships with public schools. And I can say for the first time that I think every single public school system in Virginia now is really actively embedding the Find It Virginia resources in their school systems. Some did not know we even had it, despite our best efforts. So I'm looking forward to a new day and a new relationship with the DOE and with public schools in resource and information for students and faculty. So that's very exciting. On the other hand, our library workers are frontline workers, and circulation is quite high, and people are really relying on their library for both information and recreation during the pandemic. And so that exposes a lot of our library workers, and I know directors are very torn between what is the right thing to do for their staff. And I know many directors are out there pitching curbside right along their frontline workers. So it's heartening and heartbreaking all at the same time. So I hope you'll keep those folks in your thoughts. And if you use your public library, next time you drop a book back in the drop, stick a little thank you note in it. So often folks aren't recognized for that effort. But still a lot of good work being done. I do encourage you to read that executive summary. As far as state aid, the action before you today is simply a revision of what you approved last June. So as you know, the General Assembly had originally approved a $1 million increase in state aid for each year of the biennium. But it was unallocated due to the pandemic. And the General Assembly approved a release of $1 million in state aid funds for this current year during their special session this fall. The release of the other $1 million has not been approved. It may still be. And certainly the legislative liaison for the Virginia Library Association, Phil Abraham, and the library community are working on getting that reinstated. But the spreadsheet that's before you in the board packet is simply the revised sum based on the 1 million reallocation. So there's nothing fancy there, nothing exciting. Well, it is exciting to get that money back, but nothing out of the ordinary. It's really sort of a pro forma approval to check that block for state aid this year.
It's mainly to make sure that the library board minutes reflect what the actual appropriation is and how it's allocated. So that's why Kim normally comes in the summer, in the June meeting to walk through all the waivers and so forth. All that's been done. So this is just to reflect the updated numbers based on the General Assembly.
Thank you very much, Sandy, and thank you, Nan. Any other questions before we take up a motion on this? Hearing none, is there a motion? So we have one action item, which is, as you see on the agenda, which is the approval of the revised FY21 state aid allotments. Ms. Johnson has moved, and
I'll second.
Ms. Murphy has seconded. Sensing no further discussion, I will call the roll on this recorded vote. If everyone could take yourselves off of mute, and I will proceed on. Ms. Bowles.
Aye.
Mr. Gary.
Aye.
Ms. Blevins.
Aye.
Mr. Brockwell.
Aye.
Ms. Castillo.
Aye.
Mr. Islami.
Aye.
Mr. Light.
Aye.
Ms. Little.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Ms. Murphy.
Aye.
Ms. Scott.
Aye.
And Ms. Sims.
Aye.
And Mr. Tengo.
Aye.
Excellent. Chair votes aye, so it passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Miller and Ms. Carmack. Library of Virginia Foundation, Mr. Dotson, and we're again delighted to have Pia with us. Mr. Dotson and Pia, but Mr. Dotson?
Yeah, thank you, Preston. I appreciate it. I'll be brief today. It's obviously been an interesting year so far for the first half of our fiscal year, but on the whole, things are looking pretty positive. First off, I want to thank all of you for your contributions at the end of last year. Having 100% board participation is just so very important, and we do really appreciate everything that you do for the library and your support of the library through the foundation. On the whole, things are looking pretty good. We're about 5% ahead in our unrestricted goals this year for fundraising and 82% ahead of our restricted giving compared to last year. Both of those are moving forward. What we're noticing is in a year like this year that a lot of people are very interested in supporting special projects, which we really appreciate. And we're trying to do more work for the library through those projects. Just as an idea, compared to last year, we had 393 total donors last year, and we're already at 352 through the first half of our FY21. So things are moving forward pretty well. We've been spending a lot of time trying to make sure that we're growing our major giving efforts. So a lot of our conversations have been with donors trying to engage them for larger gifts, but also to re-engage some past donors that may have fallen to the side a little bit in our communications efforts. And so far that's been incredibly successful. We've seen some significant increases in individual giving this year, and some donors that are trying to get much more involved in what the library does and being able to help support library initiatives in order to raise not only its statewide standing, but also its national standing. So there'll be more to come in those conversations as well. But it's really encouraging when we talk to donors that refer to the library as we, even those that we haven't heard from for a while. So I think these efforts are really starting to pay off. And only really other thing that I have to update today is that one of the things that the foundation does on an annual basis is program the Weinstein Author Series. And although we won't be announcing it formally until the 15th, I'll trust that everybody on the call will keep this relatively quiet, as well as the people that are watching on YouTube. So I know how much that goes for anything. But it looks like the series is going to fall this year with 3 virtual programs and 2 hopefully in-person programs in the fall and winter. On February 11th, we're bringing in Dr. Elizabeth Katz, who will be presenting on her book, Pure America, Eugenics in the Making of Modern Virginia. On April 15th, we'll be working with Kim Roberts, who is a poet, who wrote a book called By Broad's Potomac Shore, Great Poems from the Early Days of Our Nation's Capital. In June, on the 10th, we will be bringing in Vanessa Holden, who wrote a book called Surviving Southampton, African-American Women and Resistance in Nat Turner's Community. On September 14th, we plan to bring Dr. Karen Cox, who is about to release a book called No Common Ground, Confederate Monuments in the Ongoing Fight for Racial Justice. That'll be hopefully our first in-person Weinstein event on September 14th. And then on September 11th, and we're still finalizing some contracts for these, we plan to bring in Alexis Coe, who wrote a book called You'll Never Forget Your First, a biography of George Washington. And that would be the final Weinstein program of the year. So it's nice to have that programmed for the entire year, so there's some consistency in programming, but it also gives us the ability to start working on FY 2022 to start programs again in January and really stay ahead of the programming. I think it's always productive to have your programs lined up a couple years in advance, and hopefully this will help with that effort. And aside from that, we talked about this a little bit at one of the earlier meetings, but the big projects that the foundation's working on right now with the library based on some of their needs are conserving some drawings of the Jefferson Hotel, working on some digital studio infrastructure and technology upgrades, a big project around World War II separation notices, about getting those digitized and then available to the public. Working on a diversity fellowship initiative that we're currently in conversations with some larger funders around. Obviously building the unrestricted. And then also, Preston mentioned it earlier, the foundation has agreed to be the fiscal agent on this project celebrating the 1971 Virginia Constitution. Although thankfully, Trevor Cox and Preston have really been taking the lead in the fundraising efforts. So we're primarily here for support. So that is what I have to report to everyone. Pia, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you've done a great job of capturing all that we have going on. In addition, the one thing I would mention is we're doing mini strategic planning for the board and really focusing on governance and identification of board members for the foundation board. So if you have any suggestions, we welcome those. Please direct them to Scott. That'd be very helpful. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. And thank you, Pia, very much. Again, are there any questions for Scott before we move on?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Brockwell.
Just wanted to thank Scott and Pia for the report and know that I'm obligated to say this because Pia's on this call, but we may have achieved 100% last year, but there's still an opportunity to do it for this year. And to that effect, I actually remembered I need to make a gift and did it during this meeting online. So I would encourage everyone to thoughtfully consider that. And I'm really excited about the Alexis Coe event because I read her book about George Washington late last year. It is hysterical, and it's a short read, and it's one of the only biographies of George Washington written by a woman.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I second that we all should go ahead and make our new gifts if we can. Anything else? Hearing none. We will go to the report of the librarian, Ms. Treadway.
Well, I won't repeat all the things you've already heard or that are in the executive summaries, but just want to assure you, we are staying the course and just like all of you, taking everything one day at a time. The last, almost 10, 11 months have been really challenging ones. But I'm very proud of the library staff for really stepping up and doing what they need to do, and then being willing to be flexible and adaptable as conditions change, and they change all the time. We are fortunate that our workforce is very technologically savvy. So moving to having many of them telework was fairly seamless and has worked very, very well. And it has kept concentrations of people down in our building, which has been very, very important for staff. The system of taking appointments for researchers, working very, very well. And I try to walk around at least once a day to just sort of take it all in, and people are doing what they need to do. They're following the rules and keeping everyone safe. So I hope that will continue. This is just a kind of tense time, I think, with the numbers rising, but I think we've put everything in place so that we will be able to continue until more and more of the population have the vaccine. I do know that like as Nan described, for public library workers, our staff is a little bit anxious, the staff that works directly with the public. And I do completely understand that. And I have raised the question, higher up within state government. It's clear to me, looking at all the guidelines the Department of Health has issued, where higher ed fits, where the teachers, schools, school librarians fit. And I'm hearing from some public library directors that their local departments of health are including library workers in their list of essential government employees who should get earlier vaccines. But I'm not sure about how state government is doing that yet. So I have asked that question, that if it's possible for our frontline workers, if you will, the people that interact with the public, to be considered for an earlier vaccination, we would love to see that, and I'll keep you posted on that. Teleworking is working. The reserve system we have is working. It's not perfect though, and we are really looking forward to when we can get back in person. But we are still doing some really important things, and I think you can see that in the executive summaries. And I think the work that we'll be doing, that both Preston and Scott referred to on the 50th anniversary of the Constitution. I'm not exactly sure when it's going to get off the ground. It may be after session, but the commission that was approved last year on looking at the legacy of slavery and its ongoing issues in terms of discrimination that we'll be staffing, that's going to be very, very important work once that goes. We are looking ahead to our 200th anniversary in 2023 and beginning to think about having the staff brainstorm ideas that we can bring back to you all about that. We're looking at our space planning, really reactivating that again. So we're doing a lot of important work that I hope will really bear fruit once we can be back in person again. But one of the things that's also very interesting is, I think, as government's needs grow and change, we are finding people are turning to us to be part of the solution. So I think you may remember hearing maybe 6 months or so ago about the library's work with something called the Open Data Portal, how we are helping to make the data that government agencies generate all the time that has been inaccessible to the public. We are very active and involved in building that portal and making this information accessible. And the Chief Data Officer for the Commonwealth of Virginia turned to us because he knows we are experts in that field. There's another initiative going on right now that I've asked Mary Clark, who is our Access and Acquisitions head here, and she's been asked to be involved in this initiative that I think is another example of people turning to the library as a trusted place to help government solve its problems. And this has to do with state government publications. And since we will probably be bringing it back to the board sometime, maybe as early as this spring, certainly by the summer, to vote on the library's publications being part of this, since everything we published in the past was done under the authority of the library board, I thought it might be good for you to just have Mary do a very quick summary of what this initiative is all about, because I think we will be involving you with it a little bit down the road. So Mary, would you give them an overview of the work that you've been doing and how important it is?
Good morning. Thank you, Sandy. And I have some written remarks because I'm known to get off track. So I'm just going to read through this. And the initiative concerns copyright restrictions for the Commonwealth. And I am part of a small working group established by the Secretary of Administration tasked with making Virginia state government publications stored in digital repositories more accessible through a new copyright policy for the Commonwealth. The goal of the working group is to create a policy that will establish a Creative Commons license that will allow the public to more fully access the works of state government that are available online and created for the public while acknowledging the creators. The library is involved because the policy would establish the library as the rights administrator for the program. This fits with the library's role as the administrator of the State Publications Depository Program, the Records Management Program, and as the archival agency for the Commonwealth. It also demonstrates, as Sandy said, the library's trusted position within state government to act as the rights administrator for a copyright policy. Unlike United States government publications, which are free from copyright restrictions, the Commonwealth holds copyright on works created by Virginia government employees for the use of the public. Right now in digital repositories, there are over 14,000 Virginia state publications available. Sorry, lost my place. And those are available on Google Books and through the HathiTrust Digital Library. Of course, materials published before 1926 and are not restricted, but those after 1926 are restricted because the Commonwealth hasn't established a copyright policy for those publications. Just a little bit more background. When Google in the late 2000s initiated its mass digitization project in major university libraries such as Michigan, Illinois, University of California, University of Virginia, and others, many Virginia government publications were in their collections. Participating universities or members of the HathiTrust Digital Library Consortium are allowed full access to these publications, but not the citizens of Virginia and not researchers unaffiliated with the member universities. Virginia government publications with publishing dates after 1926 put them within federal copyright restrictions and cannot be printed or downloaded. And in some cases, you can only see snippets of the entire document. Publications include such things as the Acts of Assembly, House and Senate reports, Supreme Court reports, and all kinds of state agency reports and studies, all of which were created to be seen by the public. There are about 400 restricted publications created by the Library of Virginia that are findable from HathiTrust and Google Books. So through a new copyright policy, the Commonwealth's interests can be protected while enhancing access to government publications that are currently restricted. So the policy is not completed yet. We are working on it, but hopefully we will have a completed policy and the board will be, you won't be voting on the policy, but hopefully you will see the benefit of releasing the Library of Virginia's publications from restriction. And we could actually do that today without a policy, but that's not going to happen today. So anyway, all of this was authorized in 2009 to write this policy. It was authorized in 2009 for the Secretary of Administration to make a policy, and it's sort of languished, and now there's some real interest in getting it completed. So that's my report. So thank you, Sandy. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to try to answer.
Any questions for Mary or Sandy? Sandy, do you have anything else in the librarian's report?
No, that concludes it. Preston, thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is Mohammed.
Yeah, Mohammed, please.
Yeah, a question for Sandy. Do you just happen to know at the top of your head the jurisdictions that are vaccinating library employees? Do you know?
I don't. What I have seen on the public library directors listserv, I have seen several library directors from really all over the state. So there's not a pattern, say, and probably I've seen about 8 or 9 of them say, my local Department of Health has let us know that our workers will be included in the next round of a vaccine. So that it's very unscientific, but they're beginning to reach out, localities are beginning to reach out. I did see Delegate Ken Plum posted on Facebook this weekend some information about his area of the state, Northern Virginia. But it's basically your local Department of Health that is setting those priorities. So I would check with Fairfax on that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions for Sandy on the librarian's report?
Yes, please.
Barbara.
You were talking about digital publications. Is this also going to include print publications with the copyright issues?
Mary?
Hello, Ms. Vines Little. This is directed specifically to digital publications because print publications are accessible in libraries for you to look at and see the complete thing and all of that. And I don't know yet whether what the policy will look like, but it's designed to be able to for digital publications specifically to be available to people. And so I'm not sure exactly how it would affect print publications.
Right, because I've been doing some research recently just into the published acts of assembly over the years, which the library apparently does not have copies of all of them. You can get the vast majority of them on HathiTrust if you're a member. Now I have to go to the Library of Congress and get a membership card in order to access it. Is there any move for the Library of Virginia to be part of this organization?
To be a part of HathiTrust?
Yes.
No, because it's a lot of money.
Okay. All right. Well, I was just curious as far as that was concerned.
That's the goal of this policy, would make it so we would not have to be a member of these
in order to access it. Yes, I understand.
That would allow any member of the public to access digital publications from state government.
Good. And Sandy, I want to say that since I probably am one of the few board members who actually come to the library now, everything is running exceptionally smoothly, I think. And I have heard from a number of other people who have been there and they feel the same way. And we do appreciate all the efforts of the staff to make things work.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. Anything else for Sandy and her librarian's report? Hearing none, moving to the chair's report, not to replow old ground, but on the Wilder papers, again, I'll underscore that the chief of staff and the governor have been kept apprised, and the chief of staff and the governor have communicated back to us their great praise for and thanks to the library and the staff. They know the yeoman's work that was done, and so the highest level of government has been very much apprised of and is acknowledging what the library staff has done. So Mike Strom and your team and all those who came from other departments to help out on the archival effort, we lift you up. So thank you. There are, second item, there are 3 board appointments or reappointments that are still hanging out there. And we have gently and lovingly asked the Secretary of the Commonwealth just what the status is, and we hope to know soon. But as you know, they operate on their own timetable. And again, the legislature opens up on Wednesday, additional budget amendments and legislation will be introduced. And when we see something that we really need to rally support for from a lobbying effort, we will work through Mr. Light and his committee to seek support. So Cham, you're on standby. I'll go to old or new business, and then I'm going to ask Audrey after that if she has anything to add in terms of council or anything in the conduct of this virtual meeting that we need to correct. So under old or new business, I don't have anything additional. Sandy, do you have anything additional? Scott Dodson or Pia, do you have anything additional? And,
Mr. Chair, I would just like to note, I guess it's under new business, but one of the tabs that I always enjoy looking through is the media and PR tab. And it's amazing to see just how much activity, either directly or indirectly, the library has been engaged in all during this sort of COVID shutdown. And this time I was particularly happy to see that John Metz is pursuing yet another degree. And he's pursuing a degree in information science. And I just think that's a real positive reflection on John's professionalism and dedication to the profession. That was just an editorial comment.
Indeed. Thank you, Mr. Light. And congratulations, John, for all that you continue to do. Any other board members have anything under old or new business? Hearing none. Ms. Burgess, do you have any counsel or anything that we need to correct for the conduct of this meeting?
No, sir, you've done perfectly well. Thank you for asking.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Last chance for any comments for the good of the order. Going once, going twice. Hearing none. Thank you, everyone, all board members and staff who have participated, and we're again pleased to have Pia join us. And for those who have joined us by YouTube, we thank you for watching. And should you have any questions about anything on this meeting, please contact me or Sandy Treadway, and we will be happy to respond. Thank you, everyone, and the meeting is now adjourned.